She found mercy in the blizzard, and he found redemption at her door. The storm had been raging for 3 days when Mira heard the howl. Not the wind, not the trees cracking under ice, but something alive, something dying, something that made her ancient cabin feel suddenly too warm and too safe. She should have stayed inside. Any sensible wolf would have. The blizzard was the kind that killed, white and furious and absolute. But Mira had never been sensible. Her grandmother used to say she had too much heart and not enough fear. So she wrapped herself in furs, lit a lantern that barely pierced the snow, and stepped into the storm. The cold hit like a fist. Every breath burned. The wind tried to tear her back toward the cabin, but she pushed forward, following that sound. That desperate, fading howl that tasted of blood and surrender. She found him collapsed against a fallen tree, half buried in snow. A wolf. Massive. White as the storm itself, his fur stained crimson in spreading patches. One of his legs was twisted wrong. His breathing came in shallow, broken gasps, and his eyes, pale silver, ancient as glaciers, locked onto hers with something that looked like disbelief. He growled, weak, warning her away. Mira knelt in the snow beside him anyway. "I'm not here to hurt you." The wolf tried to snap at her, jaws closing on empty air. He had no strength left. She could see it in the way his body trembled, the way his eyes kept trying to close and failing. "Stubborn," she murmured. "Good. Stubborn means you want to live." She pressed her hands against his largest wound, a gash across his ribs that looked like claws, like he'd been in a fight he couldn't win. Heat gathered in her palms. Not her wolf's heat, but something else. Something her grandmother had called the old gift, the ability to pour life into dying things. The white wolf's eyes widened. His breathing steadied slightly, but he was too broken, too far gone. She couldn't heal him here, not in a blizzard, not with her own body starting to shake from cold. "I'm going to move you," she said. "It's going to hurt. I'm sorry." She wrapped her arms around his massive frame and pulled. He was impossibly heavy, all muscle and ice-crusted fur. Every step back toward the cabin felt like moving mountains. The wolf whimpered once, a sound so full of pain it made her chest crack. But he didn't fight her. By the time she dragged him through her door, her arms were screaming and her vision was blurring. She collapsed beside him on the floor, both of them gasping, both of them covered in blood and snow. The wolf watched her with those silver eyes, studying, calculating, trying to understand why a lone Omega would risk death for a stranger. Mira forced herself up, built the fire higher, gathered every healing herb her grandmother had taught her to use. And then she knelt beside the white wolf again, pressing her hands against his wounds with steady determination. "I don't know who you are," she whispered. "I don't know what you did to get hurt this badly, but you're not dying in my cabin. Not tonight." The healing took hours. She poured everything she had into him. Warmth, life, stubborn refusal to let death win. The wolf never looked away from her face, never stopped watching her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow felt like reverence. When his breathing finally evened out, when the worst wounds had closed enough that he wouldn't bleed out, Mira wrapped him in every blanket she owned. Then she collapsed beside the fire, too exhausted to even make it to her bed. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was the white wolf, still watching, still trying to understand. And somewhere in her dreams, she heard a voice like winter itself whisper, "Why?" She woke at dawn to find the wolf gone. In his place, standing by her fire, was a man, tall, scarred, impossibly beautiful in the way dangerous things are. His hair was white as fresh snow, his skin marked with silver scars that looked like lightning. He wore nothing but the blankets she'd given the wolf, and when he turned to look at her, his eyes were the same pale silver. "You saved my life," he said. His voice was deep, controlled, carrying weight that made the cabin feel suddenly too small. Why? Mira sat up slowly, her heart hammering. Because you were dying. Most wolves would have left me. I'm not most wolves. Something shifted in his expression. He moved closer, kneeling so they were eye level. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the pain he was trying to hide, and something else, something that looked like guilt. I am Caius, he said quietly, Alpha King of the Winter Territories, and last night I was fleeing a coup that killed half my pack. Mira's breath caught. Alpha King. She'd saved an Alpha King. The wolves who attacked me will come looking, he continued. They want my crown, my territory, my death. He met her eyes. And now they'll come for you too, because you helped me, because mercy is a crime in their eyes. Then we'll face them together. You don't understand. I'm asking you to run, to leave this place and never speak of what you saw. His hand reached out, stopping just short of touching her face. I'm trying to save you from the consequence of your kindness. Mira looked at this broken king who'd crawled through a blizzard to die alone, who even now, wounded and hunted, was trying to protect her instead of asking for help. No, she said simply. No? I didn't drag you through a storm just to watch you leave and get killed somewhere else. She stood, wrapping a blanket around herself. You need time to heal. I have a cabin that's hidden and stocked for winter, so you'll stay, and when your enemies come, we'll deal with them. Caius stared at her like she'd spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. You're Omega, alone. You have no pack, no protection. I have myself. And apparently, I have a stubborn king who thinks mercy is something to apologize for. She met his silver gaze without flinching. Stay, Caius. Heal. Let someone help you for once. For a long moment, he was silent. Then something in his ancient face cracked open. Something that looked like hope, fighting disbelief. Why? He asked again. But this time it wasn't a question. It was a prayer. Because the storm brought you to my door for a reason, Mira said, and I've never been good at ignoring signs. Outside, the blizzard raged on. Inside, a wounded king and a lone Omega stood in firelight, making the kind of choice that changes everything. She offered shelter. He accepted mercy. And neither of them knew they just started a story that would remake the Northern Territories forever. Caius healed slowly, and with him, the cabin transformed. He was a restless patient. By the second day, he was pacing despite his injuries. By the third, he was insisting on helping with firewood, cooking, repairs. Mira had to physically block the door to stop him from going outside. You're still hurt, she said firmly. I'm fine. Your ribs are barely healed. You can't even shift yet. I don't need to shift to be useful. His silver eyes flashed with something stubborn. I won't be a burden. You're not a burden. You're recovering. She softened slightly. Let me take care of you, just for a few more days. He looked at her like she'd asked him to do something impossible. I've been a king for 200 years. I don't know how to be taken care of. Then learn. It became a careful dance. Mira made him rest, and Caius found small ways to help that wouldn't tear his wounds open. He organized her herb collection, sharpened her knives, fixed the door hinge that had been broken for months, and at night, by the fire, he told her stories about the Winter Territories, about wolves who lived in ice palaces and hunted under aurora lights, about a kingdom built on honor and strength, now torn apart by wolves who wanted power without responsibility. The one who led the coup is named Valen, Caius said one night, staring into flames. He was my second, my trusted advisor. I thought he believed in what we'd built. What changed? I showed mercy to a rival pack. We'd been at war for decades, and I chose peace over vengeance. Valen saw it as weakness. His jaw tightened. He convinced half my wolves that I'd grown soft, that the territories needed a king willing to rule with blood instead of diplomacy. Mira watched firelight play across his scarred face. "You don't seem soft to me." "I'm tired." The words came out raw. 200 years of being strong, being decisive, being what everyone needs. "I'm so tired, Mira." And Valen knew it, used it. She moved closer, sitting beside him. "Tired doesn't mean weak. It means you've been carrying weight for too long. Weight is a king's burden. Then maybe you need someone to help carry it." He looked at her, and something in those pale silver eyes made her breath catch. "You already are, just by letting me stay here, by not asking for anything in return." "I'm not asking because I don't want anything. I'm not asking because you don't owe me. Everyone wants something. I want you to heal." She held his gaze. "That's all. I want you to stop looking like you're waiting for the next betrayal. I want you to remember what it feels like to be safe." Caius was silent for a long moment. Then his hand reached out, cupping her cheek with careful reverence. "You're dangerous." "How?" "Because you make me want to believe safety is possible." His thumb brushed across her skin. "And hope is the most dangerous thing a wolf can carry." Before Mira could respond, a howl split the night. Distant but distinct. Not the wind, not natural wolves. Hunters. Caius was on his feet instantly. Every muscle tensed despite his injuries. "They've found me." Mira moved to the window, peering through shutters. In the moonlight, she could see shapes moving through trees, large, deliberate, circling the cabin like predators scenting prey. "How many?" Caius asked. "6, maybe 7. She turned to him. "Can you fight?" "Not well, not yet." Frustration twisted his features. "I need another day, just one more." "Then we don't fight." Mira moved with sudden purpose, pulling hidden compartments from the walls. Weapons emerged. A bow, silver-tipped arrows, blades that looked ancient and deadly. "We defend, and we make them regret finding us." Caius stared at the arsenal. "You're just a lone Omega." "I'm a lone Omega whose grandmother hunted monsters." She strapped a blade to her thigh. "And who's gotten very good at surviving things that should kill her." Another howl, closer now. The door rattled as something heavy hit it. Caius moved to her side, accepting the blade she handed him. Despite his wounds, he fell into a fighting stance that spoke of centuries of battle. "If they breach the cabin, you run. Through the back, into the forest. Not a chance." "Mira? I didn't save your life just to abandon you now." She notched an arrow, aiming at the door. "We survive this together, or not at all." The door exploded inward. 3 wolves burst through, huge, battle-scarred, eyes gleaming with bloodlust. They shifted mid-charge, becoming men with weapons drawn. Mira's arrow caught the first in the shoulder. He went down screaming. Caius moved like lightning despite his injuries, his blade finding the second attacker's throat. The third lunged for Mira. She ducked, rolled, came up with her knife already moving. The blade found ribs. The wolf howled, stumbling back. More crashed through the door. The cabin became chaos, blood and steel and desperate fighting. Mira moved on instinct. Every lesson her grandmother taught her flooding back. Dodge, strike, don't think, just survive. Caius fought like a king, trying not to die before he could reclaim his throne. Each movement was precise, economical, beautiful in its violence. But he was slowing, his wounds reopening, blood staining his clothes. Then one of the attackers shifted focus, saw Mira, recognized what she'd done. "The Omega, who sheltered him," the wolf snarled. "Valen will pay well for her head." He lunged. Mira's blade was too slow. She saw death coming. Caius moved between them. The wolf's claws, meant for Mira's throat, caught Caius across the chest instead. He went down hard, gasping, silver blood spreading across the floor. "No!" Mira's scream was fury and terror. She launched herself at the attacker, blade finding his heart before he could strike again. The cabin went suddenly silent. The surviving wolves fled into the night, dragging wounded with them. And Mira knelt beside Caius, pressing her hands against wounds that were too deep, too many. "You idiot," she sobbed. "You stupid, noble idiot." "Had to," he gasped. "Couldn't let them—" "Don't talk. Save your strength." Her hands glowed with healing warmth, but it wasn't enough. Not this time. Too much damage. Too much blood. Caius's hand found hers. "Thank you. For the mercy. For the safety. For making me remember what hope felt like. You're not dying. I won't let you. Not your choice." "Yes, it is." Mira pressed her forehead to his. "Because I didn't survive this long alone just to lose the first person who looked at me like I was worth protecting." She closed her eyes and did something her grandmother had warned her never to do. She opened herself completely. Poured not just warmth, not just healing, but her own life force into his fading body. The world went white. She felt herself dissolving, becoming light and warmth and desperate determination. Felt Caius's shock as her essence flooded through him. Felt his wounds beginning to close, his heart steadying, his breath evening. And felt herself slipping away. "Mira, stop." His voice seemed to come from very far away. "You'll kill yourself." "Then we both live," she whispered. "Or neither of us do." The last thing she felt before darkness claimed her was Caius's arms pulling her close. His voice breaking on her name, and the warmth of a promise she couldn't quite hear. Then nothing. Mira woke to firelight and the sound of wolves. Not fighting, not howling, but voices. Low, urgent, arguing just beyond the cabin walls. She tried to sit up and gasped. Her body felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out her insides and filled her with air. Every movement took effort that shouldn't have been necessary. "Don't!" Caius was beside her instantly, his hands steadying her. "You nearly died bringing me back. You need to rest." "How long?" 2 days. His silver eyes were fierce with something between gratitude and fury. 2 days of your heart barely beating while I tried every healing method I know. You're a fool, Mira. A beautiful, impossible fool. She managed a weak smile. Says the king who took claws meant for me. That's different. How? Because I'm expendable. You're... He stopped, something raw crossing his face. You're the only good thing that's happened in 200 years. And you almost threw it away to save someone who's already lived too long. Before Mira could respond, the cabin door opened. 3 wolves entered, all bearing the scars of battle, all watching Caius with expressions caught between relief and shame. "My king," the first said, dropping to one knee. She was tall, silver-haired, with eyes like blue ice. "We came as soon as we heard. Valen's forces attacked. I know, I was here." Caius's voice carried an edge that made them all flinch. "Where were you when I needed you?" Scattered, hunted, Valen moved fast. The woman's jaw tightened. "We lost half our wolves before we understood what was happening. By the time we regrouped, you'd already disappeared into the storm. So you left me for dead. We thought you were dead." Another wolf stepped forward, a man with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much. "Valen spread word that he'd killed you personally, displayed your cloak covered in blood. We mourned, my king. We grieved." Caius studied them for a long moment. Then his gaze shifted to Mira. "This woman saved my life, sheltered me, healed me, and nearly died defending me from Valen's hunters." His voice went cold. "She did what my own pack failed to do, so before we discuss anything else, you'll show her the respect she's earned." The 3 wolves looked at Mira. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion in her face, the healing glow still faint around her hands, the marks of someone who'd poured everything into saving another. The silver-haired woman knelt before her. "Forgive us, Pathfinder. We didn't know." "I'm not a Pathfinder," Mira said. "Just someone who doesn't like watching things die." You gave your life force to save our king. That's more than mercy. That's sacred. The woman placed a fist over her heart. I am Sarah, commander of the Winter Guard, and I swear on the moon you have our protection, always. The others echoed the vow. Mira felt the weight of it settle over her like a mantle she hadn't asked for. What's happening with Valen? Caius asked. Sarah's expression darkened. He's consolidated power, taken the Ice Palace, declared himself Alpha King by right of conquest. She paused. But not all wolves accepted it. About half the territories are in open rebellion. They want you back, my king. They're dying for you. Then we end this. Caius stood, his movement still careful but strong. Gather every wolf loyal to the true crown. We march on the palace within the week. You're not healed yet, Mira said quietly. He looked at her, and something in those silver eyes made her chest tight. I've been healed by someone willing to die for me. That's strength enough. Caius, they're dying, Mira. My wolves, while I hide in this cabin. His jaw tightened. I won't let Valen destroy everything we built. Not when I can still fight. Sarah cleared her throat. There's something else. Valen's been hunting for the woman who saved you. He knows someone sheltered you, and he's sworn to make an example of her. The cabin went silent. Then she comes with us, Caius said, under my protection. And anyone who touches her dies. My king, bringing a lone Omega into a war zone. She's not just an Omega. She's the wolf who gave her life to save mine, who fought Valen's hunters and survived, who has more courage in her little finger than most warriors have in their entire body. Caius moved to Mira's side, his presence protective and absolute. She comes with us, or I don't go at all. Mira stared at him. You can't make that choice for me. You're right, I can't. He knelt beside her, taking her hand. But I'm asking, come with me. Help me take back what's mine, and when it's done, when Valen's defeated and the territories are safe... He paused. Stay anyway. Stay? At my side, as my equal, as the wolf who taught me that mercy isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength. His thumb traced across her knuckles. I know it's too much to ask. I know I'm offering you a crown built on blood and war, but I'm asking anyway. The fire crackled. Outside, more wolves were arriving, their voices joining the growing chorus. And Mira looked at this broken king who'd stumbled through a storm to her door, who'd tried to protect her even while dying, who was now offering her everything. I'll come, she said, but not for a crown, not for power, for you, because someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupidly noble again. Relief and something deeper flooded Caius's face. Is that a yes? It's a yes to helping you win your war. Everything else. She squeezed his hand. We'll figure out when we're not surrounded by people planning battles. Sarah stepped forward. Then we have work to do. The palace is fortified. Valen has half the Winter Guard, and he's been training his wolves to fight dirty. She looked at Caius. This won't be like the old wars. This will be brutal. Good. Caius stood, pulling Mira gently to her feet. Because I'm done being merciful to wolves who mistake kindness for weakness. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. The journey to the winter territories took 5 days through snow that never stopped falling. Mira rode beside Caius, surrounded by wolves who looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Sarah had given her armor, light, flexible, designed for someone who fought with speed instead of strength. It fit perfectly, and Mira wondered how many lone Omegas these warriors had protected before. At night, they made camp in ancient forests where the trees grew so thick that moonlight barely penetrated. Caius never left her side. He was different now, not the wounded wolf she'd found in the storm, but something harder. A king remembering how to be ruthless. "You're thinking too loud," Mira said one evening, watching him stare into the fire. "I'm thinking about what happens when we reach the palace." He turned to her. "Valen won't surrender. He'll fight to the death, and he'll take as many wolves with him as he can. Then we make sure those wolves aren't ours." "It's not that simple. Some of them were my friends, wolves I've known for decades. They chose Valen because I failed them." "You didn't fail them. You chose peace over endless war. That's not failure. Tell that to the ones who died because I wasn't strong enough to stop the coup." His voice went raw. "Tell that to the families who lost wolves because their king was too tired to see the knife coming." Mira moved closer, taking his face in her hands. "Listen to me. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to want peace. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you someone worth following." "Then why did half my pack turn against me?" "Because some wolves prefer the certainty of violence over the risk of compassion. Because Valen sold them a lie that strength only comes from blood." She held his gaze. "But you know better, and so do the wolves still fighting for you." Caius leaned into her touch, closing his eyes. "I don't know if I can do this without becoming the monster Valen claims I am. Then I'll remind you who you are, every time you forget, every time the war makes you want to stop being merciful." She pressed her forehead to his. "That's why I'm here." He pulled her close, and she felt him shake, not with fear, but with relief. Like he'd been waiting 200 years for permission to be something other than perfectly strong. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me as more than a king, more than a symbol." His arms tightened. "For seeing me." They held each other in the firelight, while around them, wolves prepared for war. And Mira realized she'd stopped thinking of herself as alone. Somewhere between saving his life and following him into battle, she'd become part of something larger. The next morning they crested a ridge and saw it. The Ice Palace. It rose from the valley like a frozen dream, spires of crystal and snow, walls that glowed blue-white in the dawn, beautiful, deadly, and completely surrounded by Valen's forces. "There must be 300 wolves," Sarah said quietly. "We have maybe half that." "Then we don't fight them all at once." Caius studied the palace with tactical precision. "We divide them, draw them out, make them think we're weaker than we are." "How?" "We use what Valen fears most." He looked at Mira. A wolf he thought was just a rumor, the Omega who saved the dead king's life. Mira's stomach dropped. "You want me to be bait." "I want you to be a symbol, proof that I'm alive, that his coup failed." Caius's silver eyes were fierce. "You walk up to those gates under a flag of truce. You tell them their rightful king demands they surrender, and you let them see what mercy looks like when it refuses to be killed." "That's insane," Sarah said. "They'll cut her down before she gets within 100 yards. "No, they won't, because Valen wants to know who saved me. He wants to make an example of her publicly." Caius's jaw tightened. "Which gives us the opening we need." Mira looked at the palace, at the wolves surrounding it, at the impossible odds. Then she looked at Caius and saw the desperation in his face, the hope, the terrible gamble he was making. "I'll do it," she said. "Mira, but I'm not going alone. You're coming with me." That defeats the purpose. The purpose is to show them you're alive, that you're strong, that you didn't stay hidden while they tore the territories apart. She stepped closer. "So we walk up to those gates together. King and the Omega who saved him. Let them see what real loyalty looks like." Caius stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression, pride mixed with fear, mixed with something that looked dangerously like love. "You're going to get us both killed," he said. "Probably, but we'll look magnificent doing it. Despite everything, he laughed. It was broken and brief, but real. When this is over, you're taking a vacation, somewhere warm, with no coups or wars or wolves trying to kill you. And you'll come with me? Someone has to make sure you actually rest. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead with fierce tenderness. Deal. An hour later, they stood at the base of the ridge, just the two of them, unarmed except for the white flag Sarah had given them. The ice palace loomed ahead, surrounded by hundreds of wolves who wanted Caius dead. Last chance to run, Caius said. I don't run. Mira took his hand. I walk straight into stupid situations and hope mercy wins. Has it worked before? You're alive, aren't you? His smile was small and fierce. Then let's go remind Valen what happens when you underestimate an Omega with too much heart and not enough fear. They walked down the ridge together, hand in hand, while behind them an army watched and waited. The snow crunched beneath their feet. The palace grew larger with each step, and at the gates, wolves began to stir. Someone shouted. Weapons were drawn. Caius was recognized. And Mira realized there was no turning back now. They'd reached the point where mercy either won or they both died trying. The gates opened to reveal chaos. Wolves poured out, weapons drawn, expressions ranging from shock to fury to desperate hope. They surrounded Caius and Mira in seconds, a wall of muscle and steel and confusion. It's him, someone whispered. The king. He's alive. Impossible. Valen said. Valen lied. The crowd parted. A figure emerged from the palace, tall, dark-haired, with eyes like black ice. Valen. He wore Caius's crown, carried Caius's sword, walked with the confidence of someone who believed he'd already won. When he saw Caius, his expression didn't change. So, the rumors were true. Did you really think a blizzard would kill me? Caius's voice was cold as winter itself. Or did you just hope it would save you the trouble of facing me yourself? I faced you. I won. You fled. Valen's gaze shifted to Mira, and apparently found a pet Omega to lick your wounds. The insult hung in the frozen air. Mira felt Caius tense beside her, felt his fury rising like a tide. She squeezed his hand once, a reminder. Don't let him bait you. This woman saved my life, Caius said quietly, which is more than you can say for yourself. I saved the territories from a weak king who chose peace over strength, who let our enemies grow bold because he was too tired to fight. Valen stepped closer. You were a great king once, Caius, before you forgot that wolves respect blood, not mercy, and how many of our wolves died in your coup. How many families were torn apart because you decided strength only comes from violence. Fewer than would have died from your weakness. The surrounding wolves murmured, some nodding, others looking uncertain. Mira could feel the territory's division, wolves who wanted their old king back, and wolves who believed Valen's promises of glory. I challenge you, Caius said. Single combat. Winner takes the crown. Valen smiled. You're barely healed. I'll kill you in minutes. Then you have nothing to fear. Except that you'll use this as some dramatic martyr moment. Die nobly, make me look cruel, inspire your followers to rebellion. Valen shook his head. No, if you want your crown back, you'll have to take it the way I took it from you. War. You want war? Caius's voice dropped to something dangerous. Then let's see how long your wolves fight when they realize their leader is a coward who won't face his challenger. The words hit like a slap. The crowd shifted, uncomfortable. In wolf culture, refusing a direct challenge was the worst kind of shame. Valen's expression darkened. Watch your tongue, old king. You're surrounded, outnumbered. One word from me, and my wolves tear you apart. Do it then. Caius spread his arms wide. Show them what your leadership really means. Kill an unarmed king under a flag of truce. Let them see the kind of strength you're selling. Silence stretched taut. Mira's heart hammered. This was the moment. Either Valen backed down, or they both died here. Then a voice rang out from the crowd. "I'll fight for him." An old wolf stepped forward, battle-scarred, gray-muzzled, moving with the careful dignity of someone who'd survived too many wars. "If Valen won't face the king, I will, as his champion." More voices joined. And I. Within moments, half the assembled wolves had stepped forward, declaring for Caius, declaring that they'd never accepted Valen's rule, that they wanted their true king back. Valen's expression turned murderous. "You're all traitors." "No." Sarah emerged from the crowd, removing the false insignia she'd been wearing. "We're wolves who remember what loyalty means, and it's not following someone who took power through betrayal." The territory was splitting right before their eyes, wolves choosing sides, drawing weapons, preparing for the civil war that had been brewing since the coup. Valen raised his sword. "Then you'll all die with him. Stop." The command came from Mira, small, exhausted Mira, who until that moment had been silent, but her voice carried something that made every wolf freeze. She stepped forward, placing herself between Caius and Valen. "You want to know why I saved him? Why a lone Omega risked everything for a king she'd never met? I don't care about... Because he took claws meant for me. Because when your hunters attacked my cabin, he put himself between me and death. Because in 200 years of being strong, he never forgot that strength means protecting the weak, not exploiting them." She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the healing marks on her arm. "I gave my life force to save him, poured everything I had into his wounds, and he did the same for me when I collapsed. That's what loyalty looks like. That's what true strength is." The wolves were silent, listening. "So yes, Valen, he chose peace. He chose mercy. He chose to believe that strength could come from something other than endless violence." Mira's voice rang clear. "And if that makes him weak, then I'm proud to stand beside a weak king, because weakness that protects is stronger than power that destroys." For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of Valen's wolves dropped his weapon, then another, then a dozen more. "Enough of this," Valen snarled. He lunged for Mira, sword raised. Caius moved like lightning. His hand caught Valen's wrist, twisting. The sword fell, and then they were fighting. Fast, brutal, centuries of skill and rage unleashed. The crowd erupted, wolves choosing sides, weapons clashing, the careful order dissolving into chaos. Sarah was shouting commands, trying to organize defense. But it was too late. The civil war had begun. Mira grabbed a fallen blade, defending herself against wolves who tried to reach Caius. She wasn't trained for this, wasn't prepared, but she fought anyway because standing still meant dying. Through the chaos, she saw Caius and Valen locked in combat, both bleeding, both determined. And she realized with cold clarity that one of them wasn't walking away from this. "Caius!" she screamed. He glanced her way for just a second, just long enough for Valen's blade to find his shoulder. Caius went down, blood spreading across snow. Valen raised his sword for the killing blow. "Die knowing your mercy meant nothing." Mira didn't think. She lunged, her stolen blade catching Valen's arm. The sword meant for Caius's heart went wide. And then Caius was up, his own blade finding Valen's throat. "My mercy meant everything," Caius said quietly, "because it gave me someone worth fighting for." The blade fell, Valen crumpled, and across the battlefield, wolves began to lower their weapons. The war wasn't over, but the king was back. The ice palace was a mess of blood and broken trust. Caius sat on his reclaimed throne, silver blood still dripping from wounds Valen had opened. Around him, wolves who'd supported the coup knelt in submission, some begging forgiveness, others silent, waiting for judgment. Mira stood at his side, her own body aching from fighting she'd never trained for. She watched Caius's face, seeing the exhaustion, the pain, the terrible weight of deciding who lived and who died. You betrayed your king, Caius said to the kneeling wolves. His voice was cold, controlled. Followed a traitor. Helped him steal what wasn't his. Give me one reason I shouldn't execute you all. Silence. Fear thick as smoke. Then one wolf spoke, young, barely more than an adolescent. Because we were scared. Valen said the territories were dying, that your mercy was making us weak, and we believed him because— The young wolf's voice cracked. Because we didn't know what mercy looked like. Caius studied him. And now? Now I've seen you take claws for a lone Omega, fight while wounded, choose to come back when you could have stayed hidden. The young wolf met his gaze. That's not weakness. I was wrong. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the kneeling crowd. Not all of them, but enough. Caius looked at Mira, a question in those silver eyes. What should I do? She thought about her own exile, about being cast out and left to die, about how mercy had saved her when nothing else could. Let them choose, she said quietly. Swear new oaths. Prove their loyalty through action, not words. And if they betray you again— She met Caius's gaze. Then judgment without mercy. He nodded slowly. You heard her. New oaths, sworn before witnesses. Betray me again, and there won't be a trial. There won't be debate. His voice dropped to something dangerous. There will only be death. One by one, the wolves swore. Some crying, some defiant. All of them understanding they'd been given something they didn't deserve. A second chance. When it was done, when the throne room had emptied except for Sarah and a handful of loyal guards, Caius finally allowed himself to collapse. Healers, Sarah commanded. Now! But Caius waved them away. Mira first. She took wounds protecting me. I'm fine, Mira lied. You're bleeding from 7 places and can barely stand. He pulled her down beside him on the throne. For once, let someone take care of you. The healers worked in efficient silence, cleaning wounds, applying salves that smelled of snow and starlight. Mira tried not to wince as they stitched a deep cut across her ribs. You fought well, Sarah said, watching with something like approval. For someone with no formal training. I had good motivation. The king? The idea that mercy might actually win for once. Sarah smiled slightly. You're good for him. He was dying long before Valen's coup, not physically, but in every way that matters. She paused. You gave him something to protect besides duty. I gave him a reason to be stupidly noble. Same thing. When the healers finished, Caius dismissed everyone except Mira. They sat together on a throne built for one, both of them battered and exhausted and alive. I have a question, Mira said. Ask. Why didn't you shift? During the fight with Valen. You're stronger in wolf form. Caius was silent for a long moment. Because I wanted him to see my face when I won. Wanted him to understand that the king he tried to kill was still the same wolf who chose mercy, even when it would have been easier to be a monster. That's very dramatic. I'm an old king in love with an impossible Omega. Dramatic is the baseline. Mira laughed despite the pain. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because I'm not. She stopped, looked at him, really looked. Saw the way he watched her like she was the most important thing in every room. Are you serious? About being in love with you? Caius cupped her face with careful hands. Devastatingly, inconveniently, in ways that make me want to do stupidly noble things, just to keep you safe. I'm a lone Omega with no pack, no family, no— You're the wolf who saved my life, who fought beside me, who taught me that mercy isn't weakness, it's the hardest kind of strength. His thumb brushed across her cheek. You're the most magnificent thing I've encountered in 200 years, and I'm asking you to stay, not as some rescued Omega, but as my equal, my partner, my— Your what? My queen, if you'll have me. The throne room went silent. Mira stared at him, her heart hammering. You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to rule beside me, to help rebuild what Valen destroyed, to show these territories what real strength looks like. He leaned closer. I'm asking you to take a gamble on a broken king who's terrible at asking for help and thinks dramatic gestures solve everything. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only one I've given in 200 years. Cut me some slack. Mira touched his face, feeling the rough stubble, the warmth of skin. I'm not cut out to be a queen. You're cut out to be exactly what you are. And what you are is someone who makes me want to be better than I have been. I'll probably make terrible decisions. Then we'll make them together. I'll definitely make you do stupidly noble things. I'm counting on it. She looked into those pale silver eyes and saw the future he was offering. Not perfect, not easy, but real, built on choosing each other when it would have been simpler to walk away. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I'll help you rebuild. Yes, I'll be your queen. She smiled through sudden tears. Yes to all of it, even the stupidly noble parts. Caius pulled her close, his arms shaking with relief and something deeper. Thank you. For saving me, for choosing me, for making me believe that 200 years of emptiness was worth surviving if it meant finding you. They held each other on a throne built for one, both of them battered and bleeding and choosing hope anyway. Outside, wolves began the work of rebuilding. Inside, a broken king and an impossible Omega wrote the first chapter of something new. Not a fairy tale, but something better, something earned. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. 3 months passed in reconstruction and careful trust. The Ice Palace transformed from a monument to Valen's coup into something warmer. Mira insisted on it. Tapestries appeared on cold walls. Fires burned in rooms that had stayed dark. And slowly, wolves who'd been afraid to show softness began to remember what home felt like. Caius ruled with a mixture of strength and mercy that confused wolves used to Valen's brutality. When rebels surrendered, he offered them choice instead of execution. When territories requested aid, he sent healers before soldiers. And through it all, Mira stood beside him, quietly showing that compassion wasn't weakness. But not everyone accepted the change. There's resistance in the northern valleys, Sarah reported one morning. Wolves who still believe Valen's way was right. They're calling you soft, saying the Omega Queen has corrupted you. Caius's expression went cold. How many? Maybe 200, growing daily. Then we deal with it. He stood, reaching for weapons, before it becomes another coup. Wait. Mira caught his arm. Let me go first. Absolutely not. They're calling me the problem, saying I'm making you weak, so let me prove them wrong. She met his silver gaze. Let me show them what an Omega can do when she stops apologizing for having a heart. Mira, these aren't wolves looking for conversation. They're looking for war. Then I'll give them something better, a reason to choose peace. Sarah looked between them. She might be right. If the king shows up with an army, it confirms what they believe, that you've become the thing you were trying to avoid. But if she goes alone, she dies, Caius finished flatly. No. Then come with me, but let me speak first. Mira took his hands. Trust me, the way I trusted you to face Valen. He stared at her for a long moment, then something in his expression cracked. If anything happens to you, then you'll do something stupidly noble and dramatic. I know. She smiled. But nothing's going to happen, because I'm not trying to threaten them. I'm trying to understand them. The northern valleys were harsh, even by winter territory standards. Mountains that touched frozen clouds, wind that could strip flesh from bone. And in the heart of it all, a gathering of wolves who looked at Caius and Mira with open hostility. Their leader was a woman named Kira, Battle-scarred, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen too many losses. She didn't bow when Caius approached. So, the soft king finally shows his face. "I show my face often," Caius said mildly. "You've just been avoiding the palace, because the palace has become a sanctuary for weakness." Kira's gaze shifted to Mira. An Omega with no pack, no training, no right to stand beside a king. And yet here she is, proof that you've lost your edge. "I saved his life," Mira said quietly. "Is that weakness? You made him think mercy matters more than strength. You've turned our territories soft. Our enemies are laughing at us." "Which enemies? The ones we're no longer at war with? The ones who asked for peace because they saw strength in our restraint?" Kira's expression hardened. Peace is temporary. War is eternal. Valen understood that. Valen is dead, and so are the 300 wolves who followed him into a coup built on lies. Mira stepped forward. "How many more have to die before you understand that strength without mercy is just violence wearing a crown? And mercy without strength is suicide. Then it's good we have both." Mira pulled back her sleeve, revealing the scars from healing Caius. "I poured my life force into saving your king, nearly died doing it. Is that weak? Or is that the kind of strength you're too afraid to recognize?" Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Kira studied the scars with something like grudging respect. "You're brave. I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't make you fit to rule." "No. But choosing to help rebuild instead of running away does. Choosing to stand beside a king everyone said was dying instead of looking for a stronger option does." Mira held Kira's gaze. "I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to recognize that mercy and strength aren't opposites. They're partners, and your territories need both." Pretty words, but words don't win wars. No, but they prevent them. Caius moved to Mira's side. "Kira, you lost your mate in the northern wars. Your son in the battles that followed. You've spent a century fighting because it was the only way to survive." His voice softened. "I'm offering you something different. A chance to live instead of just surviving. To build instead of destroy. To trust that strength can mean something other than blood." Kira's expression cracked. For just a moment, Mira saw the grief beneath the hardness, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that maybe, finally, there could be something other than endless war. "And if you're wrong," Kira asked, "if our enemies see weakness and attack, then we'll fight, together, with every wolf in the territories united." Caius extended his hand. "But let's try peace first, for the wolves who are tired of dying, for the ones who want to know what living actually feels like." Silence stretched across the frozen valley. Then Kira took his hand. "One chance," she said. "You get one chance to prove mercy isn't suicide. And if you're wrong, then you can say, 'I told you so at my funeral,'" Caius said. Despite everything, Kira smiled. Deal. The northern valleys pledged loyalty that night. Not because Caius forced them, but because he and Mira showed them that strength could look like something other than violence. As they rode back to the palace, Caius pulled Mira close. "You were magnificent. I was terrified. That's what made it magnificent." He kissed her temple. "You walked into a hostile territory and convinced them to choose peace through words alone. That's the kind of strength most kings never find. I had help. You were right there. I was backup. You were the one who changed their minds." He paused. "You're going to be an extraordinary queen." Mira leaned into him, feeling safe despite the cold. "We're going to be an extraordinary partnership." "Is that what we are? A partnership?" "Among other things." She smiled. "Like stupidly noble, dramatically romantic, occasionally terrifying things." He laughed, and the sound was free in a way it hadn't been in months. I can live with that. They rode through winter territories, slowly coming back to life, two wolves who'd both been broken by different kinds of wars, choosing each other and mercy and the hard work of building something better. It wasn't perfect. There would be more resistance, more challenges, more moments when violence seemed easier than compassion. But they'd face it together, and that was enough. The coronation was set for the first full moon of spring. Mira spent the weeks leading up to it, learning everything she'd never been taught. Court politics, territory management, the ancient rituals that bound a queen to her people. It was overwhelming, exhausting, and occasionally terrifying. "I don't know what I'm doing," she confessed one night, surrounded by scrolls she couldn't make sense of. Caius looked up from his own work. "Neither did I, for about the first 50 years. That's not comforting. It's honest." He crossed to her, pulling her away from the scrolls. "You're trying to learn 200 years of tradition in 3 months. Cut yourself some slack." "I can't. Everyone's watching, waiting to see if the lone Omega is fit to be queen. They're watching to see if you'll be the same wolf who saved their king, who fought beside him, who convinced hostile territories to choose peace." He tilted her face up, "And the answer is yes, because that's who you are. Title or no title. What if I make terrible decisions? Then we'll fix them. Together." His smile was soft. Being queen doesn't mean being perfect. It means being willing to try, to learn, to admit when you're wrong and change course. Mira looked at this ancient king who'd somehow learned to be patient with her fears. "How are you so calm about this?" "Because I've seen you face down hunters, heal impossible wounds, and talk armed rebels into laying down weapons. A coronation is easy compared to that." "A coronation is public. Everyone will see if I mess up." "Then they'll see you're mortal, like the rest of us." He pulled her close. "Stop trying to be perfect. Just be you. That's all I'm asking. That's all they need." The night before the coronation, Mira couldn't sleep. She stood on the palace balcony, watching moonlight turn snow into silver, trying to calm the storm in her chest. Footsteps behind her. Sarah joined her at the railing. "Nervous?" the commander asked. "Terrified." "Good. Fear means you understand the weight of what you're taking on." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Come, please." When Caius first took the throne, he was a disaster. Brilliant fighter, terrible diplomat. Made decisions based on instinct and hoped they'd work out. Nearly started 3 wars in his first decade. Mira stared at her. "Really?" "Really, but he learned, slowly, painfully, by making mistakes and fixing them." Sarah smiled. "You're already further ahead than he was. Because you think before you act. You consider consequences. You care about the wolves you're going to rule." "That doesn't feel like enough." "It's everything. The rest is just practice." Sarah placed a hand on Mira's shoulder. "You saved our king when everyone else left him to die. You stood beside him when standing meant death. You convinced rebels to choose peace when war was easier. That's not weakness. That's the kind of queen we need." "What if I let you down?" "Then we'll tell you, and you'll fix it, because that's what good rulers do. They listen." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Stop doubting yourself. The rest of us already believe in you. Time you caught up." The coronation took place in the Great Hall, under moonlight streaming through crystal ceilings. Every territory sent representatives. Every wolf who'd fought in the Civil War was there. The hall was packed with witnesses, all of them watching as Mira knelt before Caius. He wore his crown, ancient silver, carved with symbols of moon and ice. In his hands, he held another, smaller, more delicate, but no less powerful. A queen's crown, forged for this moment. "Mira of the Winter Territories," Caius's voice rang clear. "You stand before us not as a subject, but as a choice. A wolf who chose mercy when vengeance was easier, who chose to save a dying king when leaving him would have been safer, who chose to stand beside me when standing meant facing war. The hall was silent, listening. I offer you this crown not because you need it, not because tradition demands it, but because you've already proven you're worthy. He held up the silver circlet. Will you take it? Will you stand beside me? Will you help lead these territories towards something better than endless war? Mira looked up at him, at the ancient king who'd stumbled through a storm to her door, who'd tried to protect her even while dying, who'd taught her that strength could mean choosing compassion when violence was easier. I will, she said clearly, not because I'm perfect, not because I have all the answers, but because I believe we can be better, and I want to help build that future. Caius placed the crown on her head. The silver settled cool against her skin, and she felt the weight of it, not heavy, but present, real. Then rise, Queen Mira, and know that you're not alone, never alone. She stood, and the hall erupted. Not just polite applause, but genuine celebration. Wolves who'd lost everything in the Civil War, cheering for an Omega who'd proven that mercy could win. The feast afterward lasted until dawn. Wolves from every territory bringing gifts, swearing oaths, celebrating the end of conflict. Mira moved through it in a daze, trying to remember names and faces and treaties she'd need to understand. Caius stayed at her side the entire time, steadying her when the crowd got overwhelming, reminding her to breathe, being exactly what he'd promised, a partner. When they finally escaped to their chambers, Mira collapsed onto the bed still wearing her crown. That was exhausting. That was politics. Get used to it. Caius sat beside her, carefully removing the crown and setting it aside. How do you feel? Like I just made the biggest commitment of my life. You did. Second only to agreeing to marry a dramatic king with a savior complex. She laughed despite her exhaustion. Is it too late to back out? Completely. You're stuck with me now. He lay down beside her, pulling her close. For better or worse, through coups and coronations and whatever impossibly difficult thing comes next. Mira curled into him, feeling safe despite everything. Promise me something. Anything. Promise we'll keep choosing mercy, even when it's hard, even when violence seems easier. I promise. As long as you promise to keep reminding me why it matters. Deal. They lay in comfortable silence, two wolves who'd both been broken, both been saved, both been willing to gamble on something better than endless war. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new wolves who'd test their rule and their resolve. But tonight, they were just Caius and Mira, king and queen. Partners in the hardest kind of strength, and that was enough. Spring came to the winter territories with unexpected gentleness. Snow melted into rivers that ran clear and cold. Ice palaces began to glimmer with green as hardy plants reclaimed stone. And across the territories, wolves who'd spent centuries at war began to remember what peace tasted like. It wasn't perfect. There were still disputes. Still wolves who rejected Caius and Mira's rule. Still nights when violence threatened to undo everything they'd built. But slowly, carefully, the territories healed. Mira stood on the palace balcony 6 months after her coronation, watching wolves gather in the courtyard below. Not for war, for a festival, celebrating survival and spring and the strange miracle of choosing peace. You look thoughtful, Caius said, joining her. I'm thinking about the night I found you. How you were dying in a storm and I had no idea saving you would change everything. Regret it? Not even a little. She leaned into him. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed inside, if I'd ignored that howl. You would have been safe, alone, and I would have died, knowing mercy was just a story wolves tell themselves. That's very dramatic. I'm a king married to an impossible queen. Dramatic is mandatory. He wrapped his arms around her. But you didn't stay inside. You walked into a blizzard to save a stranger. And that choice, that single moment of compassion, saved more than just me. It saved all of us. Below, wolves were dancing, laughing, celebrating without the shadow of war hanging over them. Mira watched children play fighting, learning battle moves they'd hopefully never need. Saw elderly wolves sharing stories of conflicts that were finally over. "Do you think it'll last?" she asked. "The peace? Not without work, not without choosing it every single day." Caius turned her to face him. "But yes, I think it'll last. Because we're not the only ones who chose mercy. We just showed them it was possible. What if we're wrong? What if violence comes back? Then we'll face it, together, the way we've faced everything else." His smile was soft and fierce. "But stop borrowing tomorrow's fears. Today we won. That's enough." A commotion in the courtyard drew their attention. Kira had arrived from the northern valleys, bringing news of trade agreements and boundary disputes settled through words instead of blood. She looked up, saw them watching, and raised a hand in salute. Progress. Small, but real. "I have something for you," Caius said suddenly. "What?" He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a pendant, silver carved into the shape of a wolf running through a storm. Beautiful, meaningful. "I had it made to remember the night we met, the blizzard that brought you to me, the mercy that saved us both." He fastened it around her neck. "So when ruling gets hard, when you doubt yourself, you can remember you've already survived the impossible. Everything else is just practice." Mira touched the pendant, feeling the cool metal, the weight of memory. "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me save you, for not pushing me away when I tried to help. For teaching me that strength doesn't always look like violence. You taught me that. I just stopped fighting it." He pulled her close. "We saved each other, Mira. That's what partners do." They stood together on the balcony, watching their territories celebrate peace. Two wolves who'd both been broken, both been willing to gamble on mercy, both been rewarded with something neither expected. A future, together, not perfect, not easy, but real. Built on choosing each other when it would have been simpler to walk away. On believing that mercy could win when every instinct screamed for violence. On trusting that strength could mean something other than blood. "I love you," Caius said quietly, "for walking into that storm, for refusing to let me die, for being stubborn and impossible and exactly what I needed." "I love you too," Mira whispered, "for trying to protect me even while dying, for choosing peace when war was easier, for being a king who remembers how to be mortal." He kissed her then, soft and fierce and full of promise. Around them, the territories breathed with new life. Above them, the moon watched with patient silver eyes, and between them, something ancient and impossible had become simple truth. She'd saved a wounded white wolf in the storm. The next night, the Alpha King had knocked on her door, and together, they'd proven that mercy wasn't weakness. It was the hardest kind of strength, the kind that changed everything. If your heart beat alongside ours, like comment and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.